Father, we thank you for those that may be listening through the stream, Father God. I pray in the name of Jesus, dear Father God, that your word would do it as always, Lord God, what it's intended to do, Father. We just give you thanks and give you praise, Lord. It's in your son Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen. We're continuing on with the parables, picking up Luke 18, verses 9 through 14, the tax collector. Actually, one of my favorite parables, truth be told, because there's a lot of meat in it, a lot of stuff that touches on what we deal with in our society today. So if somebody can start off with verses 9 through 12 for me. Got it? All right.
It says, then Jesus told this story to some who had great confidence in their own righteousness and scorned everyone else. 2 men went to the temple to pray. One was a Pharisee, and the other was a despised tax collector. The Pharisee stood by himself and prayed this prayer: I thank you, God, that I'm not like other people, cheaters, sinners, adulterers. I'm certainly not like that tax collector. I fast twice a week and give you a tenth of my income.
He's pretty good, isn't he?
Thank you.
It's the first question is, who did Jesus tell this parable to? What was Jesus' purpose in telling this parable? Which this is, and just kind of give a little brief description, because this is right after, because last week we talked about the widow and her going to the judge and him describing the judge as somebody that wasn't godly, didn't do all these things. So he was actually talking to his disciples at that particular moment when he was talking about that kind of prayer, to let his disciples know not to lose faith in praying. Pray continuously, always try to pray earnestly, don't give up, don't lose faith, always stay strong in your prayers. And obviously the judge finally gives in because he gets tired of being bothered by this woman. And we kind of alluded it to how kids are, the kid wants to do something, they'll continually bother the parent long enough until either the parent gives in or the parent finally says no, period. So now he's in front of a group of people in which, so the question going into this is, who did Jesus tell this parable to, and what was Jesus's purpose in telling this parable? So,
was this a part of the Sermon on the Mount, or
no?
Because was that prior to this, or was it?
I believe so. Yes. Let's see here. Because I think on the Sermon on the Mount is when he's actually all the bees, blessed be those that hunger and thirst for righteousness, blessed are those that mourn. So it's actually before that. So not everybody at once.
Well, verse 9 says, and he spake this parable unto certain which trusted in themselves. And so I put he spoke this parable to those self-righteous persons who look down their religious noses on everybody else. And I just put the reason why is like he was putting a spotlight, so to speak, on the darkness of their heart because of the attitudes that they carried, and it just kind of reveals to them what their lives look like in reflection to, looking through Christ's eyes. If we let him be our mirror, or that's what we should be, looking in the mirror and seeing Christ and not, me, what I did and all that. But he was showing them how unrighteous they really were.
Right. Anybody else?
Just to answer both questions, I would say that he was telling to the people that needed to hear it the most, and would apply to the most. And then I guess the purpose in him telling them was, of course, in hopes that they would see, the fault in them, their own self-righteousness, and not coming humbly before God come in as if they deserve something or that they're better than, So that's what I would say for that particular question.
And just to clarify, I think I said it on last week, but a parable is a earthly story with a spiritual meaning behind it. So, I mean, when he's telling this, because think about this, I mean, in all honesty, I'm pretty sure the Pharisees, every time he got ready to tell a parable, were kind of irritated or frustrated, you know what I'm saying? Because most of the time, when he was referring to the parables about the Sadducees and Pharisees, it's just like you're saying, it was more of the fact of pointing out their self-righteousness wasn't truly righteousness. So, yes, good point.
I think it's just him like to me, like trying to get them to gain some self-awareness by looking in the mirror. You know what I'm saying? We have a tendency to look at other people as the standard and all that versus looking in the mirror and seeing ourselves for who we really are.
Right.
And just I don't know, everybody, like when you talk about, does everybody know what a Pharisee is? Everybody know? Just a religious leader.
They were priests and religious leaders back in that day. They actually still have them to a degree in the Jewish, but it's a Jewish priest basically. Is that all you got?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. It well, and I think kind of like Greg alluded to, because for me, what I put is who did Jesus tell this parable to? It was for those that were intended to hear it at that particular moment. Much like, I mean, you have certain people come into your life that share something with you that is not a coincidence or an accident, because that's God talking to you at that particular moment by either something that they say or something that they tell you, or even, because some people, to me, I mean, especially when it comes to sermons or things like that, they always think about, well, so-and-so should have been here for that. Well, that's not necessarily the case, because who was supposed to be there was there. And so, kind of like I said before, because all of Jesus's parables literally had and was designed to speak to what was going on at that particular moment. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, whether it be like Nita said, for them to look within themselves to see their own unrighteousness or their own fault, or even because we talked about a couple of weeks ago, the prodigal son, and I mean, and to me, there's a lot of parallels in the prodigal son and in this story, because the prodigal son is the one that took his inheritance, left, and pretty much squandered the money away, and came back, and his dad loved him just the same. Didn't change how he felt about him. So, I mean, so when Jesus is teaching his parables, there's always a meaning behind it. It's not a coincidence or an accident. And so, which kind of leads to the second question, which was, what was Jesus' purpose in telling this parable? Anybody else?
I kind of looked at it differently. I mean, I know he only read the first 3 verses, but I also kind of thought about like the person that's like the tax collector, like the person that kind of feels like they're lowly. It's kind of like just to reassure them, like, like what you're doing, like to encourage them, kind of someone that may not, I'm saying, they may not feel worthy enough, kind of let them know that, like, I want you to like admit that you're not worthy and kind of just submit to me.
Yeah. So, I mean, I got a question. What's the difference between humbleness and perfection? Like people that think they're perfect and people that think they're humble. When I say somebody that thinks they're perfect, who's somebody that comes to mind? It's okay.
No, I'm not gonna say it. I was gonna say LeBron James. He don't never foul nobody. He don't never do nothing wrong. But I think, to me, the perfection, I think, would be the person looking within themselves, like for being the source of that. Somebody that's humble, they understand that it's not about
I'm saying it's not about them. That makes sense that it comes from, it's like that anything that they do is good or whatever. It's like that's because of Christ living through them. It's not themselves that's doing that.
Well, I think, because I think about humility, I think somebody that relies on something other than themselves, they know that they can't do certain things without certain people. And that's the reason why, and I'll say, Michael Jordan's speech, when you got the, there was no humbleness in that speech. In fact, even to the point that the guy that took his spot as a freshman, he got him a ticket to come. Yeah, to be there, to participate in his Hall of Fame speech, which is, there's no humble, and trust me, I think Michael Jordan's a great basketball player, but to me, even in that same point, and then you got, other players, like one of my favorite players all time, and it has nothing to do with basketball to do is can you guess who it is? Play for the Lakers.
AC Green.
AC Green. And it didn't have anything to do with basketball. This guy, what did you say?
I say Cody, right?
Negative. But no, this dude was a virgin all the way up until 36.
About 38.
Yeah. So, he didn't he get his teeth knocked out and he didn't retaliate. He was just, he was humble. And so, to me, and there's people all throughout our lives that we see both scenarios. And so, that's the reason why I think it's important. And again, this is it. We're talking about a Pharisee who he thinks he's perfection, and he looks at the tax collector and thinks that he's trash.
Yeah.
So, anybody else? And can you edit that LeBron out so that this way, in case he wants to give
He's not gonna do
in
this.
case he wants to give to DTL?
He's not gonna do this. I get you.
The next one says, where did the Pharisee stand in relation to others? What does he say about all those who are around him? And how many times does he say I? And what does all this say about his attitude? So, anybody want to jump on that?
What was the first one you put?
Where did the Pharisee stand in relation to others?
By himself.
By himself? What you got? Huh? He's the same thing you wrote. I believe it, bro.
I picture him like by himself, but like with a, like you on stage and they got that light shining down on you. You by yourself.
He's by himself. He's in a crowd of people. Because the second part says escalate to at a distance by himself also. But not the same.
I pictured him like right in the middle of all of them, but like everybody was around him and everybody could hear him, or he wasn't praying. He was, making his speech all like so everybody could hear him, and right in the middle, like, okay, Lord, I thank you. I'm not like these, and he's pointing out all these people with his head up, so he's not bowed down, praying. He's like these tax collectors, because he had to know who was in there to know how to call them out, whatever. But he was just, and it said prayed within himself. I don't know that. I just felt like he was like in the middle of everything where everybody could hear, and he made sure that he pointed it all out, and he boasted of his goodness and all this stuff. And when you just said something earlier, talking about self-aware, and I had written down that he was unaware that he was sinful, and so I put him as fast asleep. He was like eyes wide shut, so to speak. Like he didn't see himself. He was just looking at everybody else, like pointing all fingers, like you did this, and you forget that these 3 fingers are pointing back at yourself. And then he said I 5 times, and then I wrote that he was self-centered, self-absorbed, and self-righteous and proud. Self-ish. I didn't write that one.
That's something.
Yeah.
all about me, myself, and 5 eyes.
5 eyes. There is a 19. It's in the A right there. Where? Anybody else? For me, I thought about, said, where does he stand in relation with others? He's that guy that thinks he's better than everybody. You know, everybody's got him in their group. You know, here's the thing. You got people, I'll just take, for example, Junior. Junior played football at Kingsville. You know, I mean, had plenty to brag about and boast about, and all the pictures that were taken of him. He was the captain, you know, but if you heard him talking about it all the time, you'd eventually go, okay, dude, we know you good, man, golly, you know. But if you hang out with somebody that's humble about, oh man, you know, God is good, you know, da-da-da, or whatever, I mean, you feel better about hanging out with that person, you know what I mean? And so, but I mean, and each one of us are good at something. I mean, that's the thing, whether we realize it or not. But I mean, for somebody to continually boast about it, I don't know, people like that just bother me. You know what I'm saying? Because to me, you don't have to toot your own horn. And I'll be, had the Pentecostal thing on Sunday, and this guy had to give all that has been going on with his prayers. And mine, to be honest, I was like, dude, you don't have to say that. If your prayer is powerful, it'll be powerful. You don't have to tell me that people get healed because you pray. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, that's being braggadocious. But I also thought about the dude that always checks off, you know, yeah, I did this, you know, I went to church on Sunday, I read my Bible verse for the day. You know what I'm saying? He had that checklist that he was.
Here's the thing with that, to me, is like all the stuff he talks about here, like he's tithing, he's, you know what I'm saying? All the stuff he's doing is like, well, that's stuff you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
Like you bragging about stuff that you're supposed to be doing anyway. You know, that's why, like, since we on sports, I mean, it just kills me, like, guys that stuff you're supposed to make the tackle. Don't. You're supposed to do this. You know, so it's just kind of amazing. Like, so
That's what you get paid for. I mean, I think about that in relation to work.
That's like every time if you put a tire out.
Yeah, exactly. And you come out of the fire. Yeah, okay, that's what I'm talking about. Pull somebody out of a car, like you drop them and start. I mean, you know what I'm saying? though? I mean, they get paid millions of dollars to do that. You know what I'm saying? But just like you said, I mean, and that's when I say he had a religious rule list that he's checking off. I went to church. I did this. You know, I prayed. You know, I mean, you know, I read one Bible verse. I mean, you know what I'm saying? It's just a checklist of things that he said, this is what I did. And so, I mean, yes, ma'am.
Going back to the perfection humbleness, I think that comes with perfectionist too. Because when you're trying to be a perfectionist, you're trying to list everything that you need to do or that what you haven't done or not in order to be perfect. But in order that we miss that when we're trying to be perfect, it's all about me. It's all about Autumn. Okay, what did I do better for me? But instead, when you're humble, you're using God as your source. You put him first before anything. So instead of you waking up saying, well, did I make my smoothie? Did I pray today? So, you know, instead of a checklist, you have to check yourself sometimes. And that is hard because when you're in God's world, and especially in this generation, it's hard to be that humble person because you're around so many perfectionists. But it's like, Jesus, I know I'm not supposed to be doing that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's hard to at the same time because it's like, it's like a tug of war every day with yourself because you're like, okay, I'm trying to be perfect, but I have to remember I'm not trying to be perfect for myself. I'm trying to be perfect for God. And living in this world, you become living of this world sometimes. And sometimes I try to use Joseph as my example, as my role model, because he was a very humble person. You know, he could read dreams and he went to prison. His brothers threw him in the dirt and gave him away. How does someone like that be humble?
Right.
You know, how can you keep being humble like that and keep the faith? He kept the faith every single day in that prison and then never stopped. And so I think that's more of a deal in this verse is like, it keeps going, I, because he's only worried about himself. And we get distracted by that and don't even realize it sometimes and be like, oh, whoa, I need to take a step back.
That made me think like one of my favorite scriptures, like it talks about like, you know, it's talking about like deny yourself. It's like, it's like the top of the.
Is it Psalms?
No, it's Mark.
Okay.
Mark.
Pick up your cross and deny yourself.
Mark chapter 8.
Go on to me.
Mark 8, verse 34 said, when he had called the people to himself, was the disciples also, he said to them, whoever desires to come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. So it's just like the first thing he says was like, if you desire to come after me, like deny yourself. It's like the first thing he says, because we get in the way.
Yeah,
we get in the way all the time. Like I said, if we're not continuing like examining and checking it, and like we're like Debo talks about a lot. Satan, we know the enemy. He does his thing, but in reality, a lot of times it's like it's us. We're like our own worst enemies. A lot of times, So because the reality is like Satan can't make us do anything. We have to endorse that. Be like, okay, I'm gonna do it. He can make the appeal or the proposition, whatever, but we basically sign off on it or say, "Nah, it's not about me."
What's the movie where Footloose, where they cut out dancing, and the next thing you know, they're trying to take books out of the library, and then he finally says, "When's enough enough?" You know what I'm saying? So I mean, and I think that's because anytime you start putting rules to make yourself look righteous, then the rule is there for the wrong reason. I mean, you know what I'm saying? So I mean, anybody else?
I think I've been trying to figure it out, but actually, when I was on the plane heading back, I had my Bible app, and I was trying to figure out what I'm gonna read. I was like, I don't know what I'm gonna read, and then I don't know, someone was just like 1 Corinthians. So I started chapter 1, I read through chapter 3, and then he showed me the lesson for today, and then I was like, it sounds a little bit similar to what I read. But it was talking about wisdom. So I was like, wisdom, and then I was like, okay, the tax collector and the Pharisee. I was trying to put the two together. And so like, I'm trying to put it all together. But so with this first guy, the Pharisee, in his own understanding and his own wisdom, like he thinks that based upon all these things that he's done, that he's good. Like there's nothing, he's not doing anything wrong. Like he's good. That's his own wisdom. But wisdom apart from the wisdom of God and the Holy Spirit that gives us godly wisdom, anything apart from that is not, is of this world. You know what I'm saying? So then I was like, okay, there's a connection between the two. So if you go to 1 Corinthians chapter 1, I'm going to kind of skip around a little bit, try and piece this together. Chapter 1, verses, let's see. Let's start at 24. And it says, but to those called by God to salvation, both Jews and Gentiles, Christ is the power of God and the wisdom of God. This foolish plan of God is wiser than the wisest of man, the wisest of human plans, and God's weakness is stronger than the greatest of human strength. Remember, dear brothers and sisters, few of you were wise in the world's eyes, or powerful or wealthy, when God called you. Instead, God chose things the world considered foolish to show those who think they are wise. And he chose the things that are powerless to shame those who are powerful. God chose things despised by the world, things count nothing at all, and used them to bring nothing to what the world considers important. So no one can ever boast in the presence of God. God has Jesus for our benefit. God made him to be wisdom itself. Christ made us right with God. He made us pure and holy, and he freed us from sin. Therefore, as the scripture says, if you boast only about the Lord. For right here, I thought it was cool that, I don't know how many times he said, like, it refers to, like, God or Christ, like, it says he, for the number of times that the guy said, I. And then if you continue on to chapter 3, it is, and I thought this basically kind of like helped bring it full circle a little bit. If you started, let's see, Let's see. I guess it's 8. He's talking about basically, planting the seed, who waters it, but it's ultimately God that is the one that changes an individual's heart, or it's God that does the transforming. You just played a part in it. And so it picks up in verse 8. It says, the one who plants and the one who waters work together with the same purpose. And both will be rewarded for their own hard work. For we are both God's workers, and you are God's field, you are God's building. Because of God's grace to me, I have laid the foundation like an expert builder. Now others are building on it. But whoever is building on this foundation must be very careful. For no one can lay any foundation other than the one we already have, Jesus Christ. And then verse 12, anyone who builds on that foundation may use a variety of materials, gold, silver, jewels, wood, hay, or straw. But on the day of judgment, but on judgment day, fire will reveal what kind of work each builder has done. I thought that was pretty interesting. So we're all building, but it's like I can make a judgment based upon how you live, what I see on the outside, but ultimately in the end, you know what I'm saying, God's judgment and that fire is going to determine, like when you heat something up, you put what is it, gold?
All of those
It
metals.
refines in the fire, and then you have the result. And then verse 13, I just read that. But on the day of judgment, fire will reveal what kind of work each builder has done. The fire will show if a person's work has any value. And then 14, if the work survives, that builder will receive a reward. But if the work is burned up, the builder will suffer great loss. The builder will be saved, but like someone barely escaping through a wall of flames. Don't you realize that all of you together are the temple of God, and that the Spirit of God lives in you? God will destroy anyone who destroys his temple. I thought that part was interesting because no one else gains anything from you being selfish, and you gratifying yourself. So it's like he says here, God will destroy anyone who destroys his temple. Well, it just said that we are all part of the body. We're all part of that temple. So anything that is opposing that is against it. And then it says, for God's temple is holy, and you are that temple. And then it says, stop deceiving yourselves if you think that you are wise by the world's standards. You need to become a fool to truly be wise. For the wisdom of this world is foolishness to God, as the scripture says. He traps the wise in the snare of their own cleverness. And again, the Lord knows the thoughts of the wise. He knows they are worthless. So don't boast about following a particular human leader, for everything belongs to you. Whether Paul or Apollos or Peter or the world or life and death or the present and the future, everything belongs to you. And you belong to Christ, and Christ belongs to God. So I thought that it was pretty lengthy, but like in a nutshell, it kind of summarizes everything that what we're starting to talk about. And I just thought that it was pretty cool because you kind of see like both ends of the spectrum, like Jalen was saying. When he was talking about, you have one guy that's like gratifying himself, and another guy is taking that humble position where he should be. Well, they're both going to go through the fire, but whose foundation is going to burn down to the ground? You know what I'm saying? And so it's just like, I thought that was pretty cool, and there's a lot that this guy kind of showed me, if anything, that maybe y'all took away from that. But that's right.
Well, just like you said, each one, I mean, a carpenter does a carpenter's job, a plumber does a plumber's job. Doesn't mean that a plumber can't look at a carpenter and say, hey, that wall's off tilt. But I mean, each one of us had the responsibility to whatever God called us to do. But it can't be because, and there's nothing wrong with rules, don't get me wrong. Because, I got rules in my home, you got rules at churches. But when the rule becomes the deciding factor on whether you're righteous or not, then again, I just say that there's a problem with the rule.
When Jesus came, like he kind of wiped all of that out.
Yeah.
Because it was like, love the Lord your God and then love others as yourself. Like that covers the commandments and some. You know what I'm saying? So it's like there's no checklist. Like she was saying earlier, we kind of have a tendency to go through that checklist. Well, God's not calling us to conform to a checklist. Right. It's like just live it, be it. It's like a lifestyle.
And you can't meet it anyway.
No.
That's why you can't meet it. You know, when you started talking about, when you first started talking, you was talking about like, you know, that Pharisee like being wise in his own eyes. It made me think about Saul's conversion with Paul, because when he was Saul, he was like, I don't know, this is like, I'm doing this for God, and like he was killing Christians. And he thought in his own eyes, he's like,
He thought he was right.
it's like he thought he was holy, right? Till God put, you know what I'm saying? Till he got a hold to him, and you know.
And even with that, seeing which we'll get into the tax collector, that is the difference between the Pharisee and the tax collector, is the fact that there was a realization, because I mean, again, Paul on the road to Damascus, when he got smacked down, so I think this tax collector being in this environment came to a realization that there's something within himself that needed to change. Whereas the Pharisee, look at me, look what I've done, kept all these rules, I've kept all these things, and he's not understanding that grace and mercy is a necessity in order to be able to do what God's called us to do. Anybody else? It says, how can good things like being dedicated to Bible study, Bible memory, serving and teaching lead to arrogance?
I think the same way that you have a checklist, you have a ranking list that you generate. And so based off of how many times I did this as opposed to this individual or that individual, now I'm measuring, and now I'm not using Christ as the standard. Now I'm measuring it based off of everyone else that's on the same level that, you know what I'm saying, as me. So it's kind of like, I don't know.
Those things can lead you to think that you're like super Christian.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I'm not just a regular everyday Christian. I'm like, I don't even have to open the Bible to recite it. I can just, tell me the scripture, I got it, or, I'm at every meeting, I'm at every study, and me and him both can tell you, like, for years, the church we first went to together, we were at everything. Probably 5 out of the 7 days we were there, twice on Sunday at least. And I think he would agree with me to say that during those times we were the farthest away from God. During those times, we was at church doing, but as far like relationship wise, it's like. But I think, and I'll speak for myself. In my mind, you think that
was pretty close back
then. In my mind, you're thinking that I'm here, I'm doing all this and this. You can make the mistake of equating that to having like being really spiritual and having a really solid relationship versus someone like, oh man, this guy ain't never at study. Well, why is he not at study? Why is he not at church? It's a lot of, and that was a struggle for me. Like when I started working at the fire department, it was like, and I guess that kind of broke me of that mentality, because it's like, I can't be here every Sunday. It's just my schedule don't work like that, so it made me understand that it's not about, yes, you are to fellowship with other believers. That's in the Bible, but for me to be like, oh my God, I'm not gonna be able to go to church this Sunday, I'm in trouble, or I'm any less spiritual. If anything, it made me really start trying to develop that closer relationship, because I had to. If I had to, with nobody to feed me, I had to feed myself, so to speak. So it wound up being a really good thing. But at first it was like kind of, oh man, I love my job, but this is kind of, and you can even feel like, because at first I almost felt like guilty. Like, man, I'm missing this, I'm missing that. But the reality is that, our relationship with God is not a building. You know what I'm saying? It's not Sunday, and it's not Tuesday. It's every day. So that really helped me to get in that mindset from where I was at.
I can honestly say I was a Pharisee back then. I basically, and as a youth pastor, when certain people wouldn't be there because their kid had a function, I was the guy that was like, really? You know what I'm saying? Until it was my kid that was in a function. And, you know what I'm saying? But I was looking through the old saying, was it rose-colored glasses, where everything was rosy that I did, but anybody else that did it, it was judgmental on my part. And it was a valuable lesson, because again, to the point that I was serving the Lord so much and so that it almost cost me my marriage. That's how bad it was. Because he says 5, I was there 7 days out of the week. But I was literally there. If I was not there, and I know Anita can attest to this, they were at choir rehearsal with my wife. But literally my relationship with my wife was damaged by the church, the church. And so, again, it's not about doing all these checklists. It's about, but now in the return respect, my relationship with my wife now is probably better than it's ever been in the 26 years we've been together. The first 5 years I was a jerk. I was an idiot. And I'll tell anybody that. The next 5 years, I was too busy being Mr. Righteous that I was dealing with everything else except what was going on in my home. And then the last 10 years has been trying to make up for all the things I screwed up before. And so now, I can honestly say that my relationship with Tia is better than it's ever been, ever. And so, don't think that being religious makes you any closer to God. Because we see it right here. Because this is Jesus talking to those people that were religious. And religious does not get you a relationship. So I agree with you. I think that you said about the arrogance. Because I was arrogant back then. Wore the right suit, spent.
Had to have the right suit.
Oh, yeah. Had to have the right colors for the church anniversary, for the pastor's appreciation, for the men's choir annual, for the women's choir annual, for the youth thing. To the point where, now I literally hate wearing a suit because of my intentions that I had back then. Because I wanted to look good. And I figured looking good, that made me look more religious. You know what I'm saying? Because you love to hear people, oh, man, you look clean, bro. That is, man. And somebody tell you look like Barney because you got on a purple suit. So, says, can knowledge or doing good things make us godly? Somebody find Isaiah 6, verses 1 through 7. Keep in mind, those that don't know, Isaiah is probably one of the toughest prophets that was out there. And this dude was, all you got to do is read, I think it's Isaiah 39, those that wait upon the Lord, he shall renew their strength. Is it 41?
41, 42.
Yeah. All you got to do is just read that one, and you'll see Isaiah's a pretty bad dude. Huh? Okay. I can do that. Anybody got Isaiah 6?
In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw also the Lord sitting upon a throne, high and lifted up, and his train filled the temple. Above it stood the seraphims. Each one had 6 wings. With twain he covered his face, with twain he covered his feet, and with twain he did fly. And one cried unto another and said, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory. And the post of the door moved as the voice of him that cried, and the house was filled with smoke. Then said I, Woe is me, for I am undone, because I am a man of unclean lips, and I dwell in the midst of a people of unclean lips. For mine eyes have seen the King, the Lord of hosts. Then flew one of the seraphim unto me, having a live coal in his hand, which he had taken with the tongues from off the altar. And he laid it upon my mouth, and said, Lo, this hath touched thy lips, and thine iniquity is taken away, and thy sin purged.
I like the message on that, woe is me. Because he says, I'm as good as dead. Every word I've ever spoken is tainted. Blasphemy, even if I was to compare, and the people I live with talk the same way, using words that corrupt and discreet. And here I am looking God in the face. He is King, God of the angel, and the God of all armies. As good as dead. And this is Isaiah, who I just told you what it's like. I mean, he's as strong as a prophet as you could get. And so, I mean, it says, what did Isaiah say about himself in the presence of God?
He was unclean. He was sinful.
Guilty. I mean, to think about it. I mean, again, going back to what we compare ourselves to. I mean, we truly cannot fathom how holy God is. I mean, there's no perfect thing other than Christ that you can compare. Because even Jesus said, when the guy comes up to him and says, good teacher, he said, why do you call me good? He said, there's none good except for the Father. This is Jesus. Yet he alludes to how awesome God is, even though he's God himself. I mean, you know what I'm saying? So, I mean, imagine how Isaiah felt. I like, because Paul, I mean, and they kind of downplay it, but I mean, he said, all these things I consider rubbish. And he basically says poop. I mean, all this is poop. All this is dung compared to the knowledge of knowing Jesus Christ as my Savior. Everything that he had, and this is like you said, I mean, Saul, and when he was Saul, I mean, we're talking about a dude that had money, that had prestige, that had, I mean, he was well known. I mean, this dude had it all. And yeah, he said all of that. You know what I consider? Trash. There's nothing. And so, I mean, you know, and that's what, when we come into that relationship, we realize how filthy we are. Because there's no big S and little s when it comes to sin. It's just sin. And so I realize and understand that I need something bigger than me to get through that. Says, maybe we aren't as bad as the Pharisee, but how can we be like the Pharisee? And this is our last one because we'll go to part 2 since we've almost gone an hour. So part 2 will be the tax collector. So the question was, maybe we aren't as bad as the Pharisee, but how can we be like the Pharisee?
I think like Greg said, you know, we can be like the Pharisee when we do that comparison thing, when we compare how good we are and how much sin we don't commit compared to other people or him, her, or see, she's doing that, well, I don't do that, or, you know, and we, that's kind of exalting ourselves, and we put them down because see, she does that, and he does that, and I don't do that, so that makes me a little bit higher on the sin-o-meter, right? But there's no such thing because God's looking down and he sees dot, and all the spots are sin, and it doesn't, and there's no level, it's just all wrong. But that's just how when we exalt ourselves to be seen better than others, that's what I put. It says the Father is not pleased. Philippians 2:1-16. I don't remember what that was, but maybe I'll read it.
Well, she looking at it, I just think about how, like the Bible talks about, like how salvation is not based upon any type of our works, because you know He knows that we subject to like boast about what we do. You know, it's kind of like that's the kind of like she said, man. I don't know. I think a lot of times we can get caught up into doing things because either to be like the Pharisee because I want to be seen by others. I want people to know like I'm the man, like I'm important, you know, I'm running things, all that stuff. In reality, it's really ridiculous in reality. But you know, that's kind of I think it's kind of the picture that society paints, that you have to be that way in order to be successful, to be whatever. That's like the picture that's painted. But reality, just like when we didn't talk about the tax collector, but reality, God is interested in the one that acknowledges that. Like he said, no, I don't. I need help. I can't You know what I'm saying? I'm not trying to take credit for anything. The only thing we can take credit for is a sin we commit. We can take credit for that, you know. But anything good or any righteousness that we have it's all through Him. It's never about us. It's all through Him. And that's why I know sometimes I be pretty hard on athletes because I mean he can tell you like we grew up in a time where it just wasn't my favorite athlete. Some of my favorite, like I use Barry Sanders for example. The guy who had, if anybody had reason to like be doing all kind of crazy stuff, man, the guy scored a touchdown. He just go ahead and rep the ball. You know, he wasn't trying to all the theatrics and drama and all this stuff. He wasn't about all that. So, you know, yeah, I'm kind of hard on him because, and I get it, some of that's entertainment, but at the end of the day, man, humility goes a long way. You know, just like one of my favorite guys, he said like Kawhi Leonard, you know, he played this year, but because the guy, I mean, he can make a game-winning shot, and his whole nothing changed. Nothing changed. Face never changed. He could miss 5 or 6 shots in a row. You know, it was like just same guy.
Description.
Yeah, this is like the summary of that whole like first part, I guess. I'm trying to read it slow. I'll read fast.
Oh, you good?
Okay. Philippians 2 says, if there be any consolation in Christ, if any comfort of love, if any fellowship of the Spirit, if any bowels and mercies, fulfill ye my joy, that ye be like-minded, having the same love, being of one accord, of one mind. Let nothing be done through strife or vainglory, but in lowliness of mind, let each esteem other better than themselves. Look not every man on his own things, but every man also on the things of others. Let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus, who being in the form of God thought it not robbery to be equal with God, but made himself of no reputation, and took upon him the form of a servant, and was made in the likeness of men. And being found in fashion as a man, he humbled himself and became obedient unto death, even the death of the cross. Wherefore God also hath highly exalted him, and given him a name which is above every name, that at the name of Jesus every knee should bow, of things in heaven, and things in earth, and things under the earth, and that every tongue should confess that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of God the Father. Wherefore, my beloved, as ye have always obeyed, not as in my presence only, but now much more in my absence, work out your own salvation with fear and trembling, for it is God which worketh in you both to will and to do of his good pleasure.
I think I really like that because my favorite person in the Bible is David. He reminds me of my nana. And David he got caught up into the fame and, you know, slept with his partner's wife. And, you know, it gets that bad. And it got that bad. You know how you said you have to further yourself in order to get closer to God. And he had to go to the desert. Yes, we don't have one. We can't just do that. But I feel like that verse right there really hit because he needed fear. And we need fear sometimes in order to strike that. We need to get closer to God. And sometimes we lose things or some things further us from God. Like now in my life, my nana's we're dealing with her passing away right now. And, you know, that's really hard because she's the one in our family who held our foundation on, you know, we make time for God is what our daily thing in our house is. You make time for him no matter what. You know, I'm not even allowed to work on Sundays because that time is for him. You know, we still have to do the Sabbath day for her because that's how traditional she is. And, you know, it's hard. That's why I said it becomes hard. And you become a David sometimes. Get distractions. And you're like, oh, I do deserve that. You know, I gave everyone this. I deserve that. No, you don't. You don't deserve nothing more, nothing less. You know, you deserve what you put in. And going back to athletes, what you put in is what you're going to get out. So if I put in one, get out of him. You know, I can't keep going halfway with him. I can't keep being inconsistent. And that's where that comes in. Just because you go to prayer and just because you go to church every day does not mean you're getting closer and gaining his faith. That does not mean that. It just means, yes, you're doing that, but is your heart in it? And that's what really matters to him, is where your heart is with him.
Good. I think it's the motive. The motive for whatever you're doing while you're doing it. Here's the thing to me. I mean, we go to all these different churches, all these different traditions. Because again, Tia's aunt passed away. We went to the funeral service on Friday. And I guess because I've been away for a little bit, but just watching the traditional, things, I was just kind of like, man, we're so caught up in what we think this is the way it's supposed to be like, that we've lost focus again to have that relationship. But I think today how we've gotten like the Pharisees is like, you have pastors, did y'all fix pastor plate? But yet, you just read it. In order to, if I'm trying to be like Christ, and again, I'll say this, and I need to work on it, I'm not gonna lie. But if we ever got to the point where we're trying to outserve each other, can you imagine what that would look like? Could you imagine, no, I got this. No, I got this. And again, it's little things, trash on the floor. You see somebody else, no, I got it, man, don't worry about it. And I'm talking about from the person, the greatest example that I've ever heard as far as in our world today was a guy that was the owner of Kia or whatever. And they were out, there was construction going on in one of their buildings, and the construction crew left for the day, and there was stuff out there that was left undone. And so this is the owner. He goes out there and starts picking up those rocks and throwing them in this trash thing. And one of the guys said, hey man, those guys will be back here tomorrow. Why are you doing that? He said, because it needs to be done. And so, and that's what Christ did. You know what I'm saying? He didn't come for those that are AKA healthy. He came for those that are sick. And so again, if we have the attitude of trying to outserve each other, we really think about that. And I'm not just talking about in this circle, I'm talking about in our world. Could you imagine the impact that could truly have? Because again, if we're doing everything wholeheartedly unto the Lord, and I'm guilty of it. I'm saying this is, it's convicting for me. And so, if nothing else, start at your home. Try to outserve each other at your home. If there's something that needs to be done, just do it. You don't have to be told, kind of like you talked about football players, basketball players. To me, getting an A, yeah, I'll reward you for it, but at the end of the day, you should want to do that because that's what you should want to be. If you're doing everything wholeheartedly unto the Lord. You're about to say something, G?
Yeah, back to what you're talking about. You talking about relationship. That's the biggest thing out of everything, because nothing that we're talking about essentially matters if you don't have a relationship. Because there's people that their goal is to obtain knowledge just for the fact to have the knowledge so they can say, oh, I know this, I know that. There's a group of people, I can't remember the name of it, that know the whole Bible inside and out, but they have no ties, no any relationship whatsoever with God. It's like another book for them. You know what I'm saying? So it's like I heard a quote. I think I read it earlier in a commentary, but it said it was in when I was talking about 1 Corinthians. It said we spend a lifetime, like it said, people spend a lifetime obtaining wisdom and never learn how to have a personal relationship with Christ. So it's just like that's the world. It's like, let me get all this knowledge and wisdom for nothing, because you know what I'm saying. If you don't have, just like talking about the foundation, you worked to build this up for nothing. You know what I'm saying. And then you were talking about. I was going to say earlier when we were talking about how you rank people, how we that what's the word that's used in the question? No, it starts with an A. What's the word that you said?
I was being led by the Holy Spirit.
Yeah, it was in the question. You said, "What? Arrogance." Yeah, about the arrogance. I was thinking about, because I've been traveling a lot lately, and I was like you get on a plane and you have economy, you have first class, you have all this stuff, and I think about society. It's just society is geared to make you think based upon, we have a middle class, we have a lower class, we have an upper class. And then we have systems where if you did this, and that, well, then you have certain benefits over this individual, that individual. So it's like everything is geared for you to be arrogant. Essentially, if you've gotten there, it's like if you did this, well, you earned this. Well, you deserve this. You deserve this because you're here. But it's like if I'm on the plane, it doesn't matter if I'm in first class or if I'm in the back. If the plane crashes, that just means either you're gonna hit the ground first before us, or you know what I'm saying. So it's just like it doesn't matter at that point. And so it's just like the same concept with us in society, us as people. It doesn't matter how much money I make. I could be poor. You know, that's why it says, that's why that scripture goes back to the scripture. God uses the poor to make those who are filled, you know, to make them feel not as they are. And so it's just like, it's all coming together now, but I'm just seeing it. So, but it's just like, the big picture though is like to have that relationship, because you said it, because it doesn't matter. Like I could come in here and like, we can go back and forth, bounce everything off. It's like, man, this sounds real good, and then go back to the house and it's the same thing. So it's just like, if our personal walk, if our personal relationship is not intact, then it's just like, why are you doing it? You know, what's your really check? Why are we doing it? If it's not genuine, if it's not sincere, if it's not, you know what I'm saying, something that's, if I'm not trying to do this to show this is what I know, but it's to benefit someone who may not know. Maybe I'll say something that Junior may pick up on. Junior, how old are you? How old are you? 9. So there's a lot of stuff that he doesn't know that he can pick up from that. There's stuff that I can get from him. I can get from, it doesn't matter. God can use anybody in this room to get his point across to you. And so that's one thing that I think is big, is that we all share. But like that personal relationship, man, is just like, oh, that's been in my mind like ever since he said it. It's just like, because all this is for nothing. If you know what I'm saying, like it talks about, I can do all these things, but if I don't have love, you know what I'm saying, then you know what I'm saying. So it's just like that question is just like, when my question for myself and everybody else is, when the fire comes, you know what I'm saying, where's your foundation gonna be at? Is your building still gonna be standing up, or is it gonna be all the way down to the slab? You know what I'm saying? So just think about that when y'all go back home and your quiet time. And we don't have a desert, but we got a quiet spot. You know what I'm saying? So we have God has given us so much, and He's given us opportunities, and He's continuing to give us opportunities to get it right. You know what I'm saying? Every day you wake up, there's another opportunity to get it right. And so it's just like, don't wait till you don't have that opportunity, because then it's too late. You know what I'm saying? So that's all I got.
And to show you how that's so true, a girl that I coached with, Shelby, who became a cop in Monroe, Louisiana, died yesterday. She's a cop in a car chase, hit a tree and gone, 26 years old. So, I mean, and this is a girl that, great kid, went to Stony Point. I mean, was, good friend.